From the absolute peak with 5 World Cup titles to the unforgettable humiliation of a 7-1 loss at home, Brazil has gone from a factory of legends like Pelé, Ronaldo, and Ronaldinho to a national team filled with names that bring more frustrations than triumphs. They say the English invented football, but it was the Brazilians who elevated it to perfection. In Brazil, football wasn't just a sport, it flowed like art, transcending competition and shaping the soul of the nation. The beautiful game wasn't just a technical expression, but a celebration of Brazilian identity, making the country the true heart of world football. With 5 World Cup titles, more than any other nation, Brazil built a dynasty that once seemed untouchable. But everything has changed, and the glory days appear to be over. The magic has been replaced by inconsistency and a lack of identity. Combined with the struggle to adapt to modern tactics, has left the once feared footballing nation on the brink of disaster. The real possibility of missing out on the next World Cup. When football arrived in Brazil in the early 20th century, it wasn't a sport accessible to everyone. In the first few decades, the game was restricted to the white elites or those of European descent, who played it in a casual, amateur manner within closed clubs. Meanwhile, in the streets, alleys, and vacant lots, young people from the working class began to develop their own version of the game. These players improvised with makeshift balls and goals, crafting a style of play that prioritized improvisation, skill, and creativity. It was there that the early signs of the Jogo Bonito began to take shape, quietly challenging the established norms and revolutionizing the sport. The Brazilian style that would later captivate the world was shaped by local culture. The players' smooth dribbling mirrored the movements of samba, while tricks like juggling and bicycle kicks echoed capoeira, a martial art that blends dance and combat. In 1958, Brazil introduced the world to a new kind of football, with Pelé, then a 17-year-old prodigy, embodying this style. Alongside Garrincha and other talented players, Brazil stood out for its creativity and spontaneity, in contrast to the rigid European tactics of the time. That generation dominated football, winning 3 out of 4 World Cups between 1958 and 1970, cementing Brazil as the greatest footballing power in the world. Football became a source of national pride, and children across the country dreamed of wearing the national team jersey, following the legacy started by Pelé. The Brazilian national team's glorious journey continued strongly in 1962, in Chile, even without Pelé, who was sidelined due to an injury in the early matches. It was then that Garrincha, the genius angel with bent legs, emerged as the main star, leading the team to yet another World Cup title. In the final against Czechoslovakia, Brazil delivered yet another masterclass of football artistry, winning 3-1 and enchanting the world with its captivating style. The consecutive victories in 1958 and 1962 solidified the country as a dominant force on the football stage, not just for the success and results, but for the inspiring and beautiful way they played the game. If the victories in 1958 and 1962 established Brazil as a global power, the 1970 campaign in Mexico secured its place in the pantheon of the greatest teams in history. Under Zagallo's leadership, the national team played football that flirted with perfection, featuring legendary names like Pelé, Tostão, Rivellino, Jairzinho, and Carlos Alberto. It was a team that balanced refined technique with flawless tactics, playing with unparalleled passion. The final, against Italy, a 4-1 triumph, was the crowning achievement of an impeccable campaign. Carlos Alberto's iconic goal, following a masterful sequence of passes starting from Clodoaldo, remains one of the greatest moments in World Cup history. In the 1980s, a new generation, led by Zico and Socrates, mesmerized the world with football that many consider the most beautiful ever seen, even though they didn't win as many titles as previous generations. After a period without major achievements, the victory in the 1989 Copa America reinforced the national team's winning tradition and fueled hopes for more success. After that, Brazil returned to the top of the world in 1994 in the United States. The team, led by Carlos Alberto Parreira, was a blend of defensive solidity and offensive firepower. Romario and Bebeto formed one of the most lethal attacking duos in history, while Dunga, the midfielder with the most passes in World Cup history, and Mauro Silva provided stability in the midfield. The campaign on American soil was marked by tough and thrilling matches. The final against Italy was a nerve-wracking test, decided by penalties after a goalless draw. When Roberto Baggio missed the decisive kick, euphoria swept across Brazil. The long-awaited fourth title was finally theirs, and after 24 years, a new generation of fans could celebrate the return of the Brazilian national team to the top. The 2002 World Cup, held in South Korea and Japan, marked the return of Brazilian football to its former glory, regaining the prestige lost after the 1998 defeat. Under the guidance of Luiz Felipe Scolari, known as Felipão, the national team showcased a flawless mix of skill and determination. At the heart of this campaign was Ronaldo, whose career had been jeopardized by a serious injury. Against all odds, he returned to the field in grand style and took on the starring role. Alongside him, Rivaldo and Ronaldinho captivated the world with their brilliant and decisive plays. The final against Germany became a memorable moment in the sport's history, with Ronaldo scoring both goals in a 2-0 victory. This triumph solidified Brazil as the only nation to lift the trophy 5 times. The iconic image of Ronaldo raising the cup, with a smile that expressed both relief and joy, is etched in the minds of football fans, symbolizing not just victory, but also a journey of resilience and the magical essence of Brazilian football. But it seems those were Brazil's last golden years. The 2006 World Cup, held in Germany, had everything to be yet another unforgettable chapter in the history of the Brazilian national team. Brazil entered the tournament as the defending champions with a star-studded lineup that made any fan dream. Ronaldinho, Kaká, Ronaldo Fenomeno, Adriano, and Roberto Carlos formed a team that, on paper, seemed unbeatable. The fans firmly believed that the path to the much-desired 6th title was wide open. However, what unfolded was one of the most bitter disappointments in Brazilian football history, turning the dream into a nightmare that left deep scars. Despite a smooth campaign in the group stage, something seemed off. The victories over Croatia, Australia, and Japan were comfortable, but they masked issues that would be exposed in the decisive moments. The team, which once embodied the Jogo Bonito, appeared strangely bureaucratic and uninspired. The engaging and creative football that the world expected from Brazil was replaced by a slow, predictable style. Players who were stars at their clubs started showing signs of fatigue and a lack of connection. Ronaldinho, named the best player in the world the previous year, couldn't replicate his magical performances and seemed unable to change the course of the matches. In the round of 16, Brazil faced Ghana and won 3-0. But the score didn't reflect the reality of the game. The lack of cohesion and defensive flaws were clear signs that the team wasn't at its best. It was as if the national team had lost the essence that made it unique. This sentiment became even more apparent in the quarterfinals when Brazil faced France, a team that had already been their nemesis in the 1998 final. In that decisive match, Zinedine Zidane, in his farewell to the game, delivered a masterclass of technique and leadership. He controlled the French midfield with mastery, while the Brazilian team seemed lost, unable to respond. Thierry Henry's goal, following a precise cross from Zidane, sealed Brazil's elimination in a melancholic manner. The apathy with which the team played was a clear reflection of a lack of preparation and, to some extent, arrogance. It was as if the squad believed victory would come by inertia, simply due to the individual talent of its players. However, France's collective and disciplined football exposed all of Brazil's weaknesses. After the elimination, frustration swept across the country. How could a team full of stars be eliminated so unremarkably? Criticism quickly turned to the poor physical preparation and tactical choices of coach Carlos Alberto Parreira, who was harshly questioned for his inability to motivate the squad. Beyond tactical and physical issues, criticisms arose concerning the players' commitment. Accusations that the team's focus was more on endorsement deals and parties than on winning the 6th World Cup spread quickly. The disorganization and lack of effort on the pitch showed that the brilliance of that generation had faded long before the final whistle. The elimination in the 2006 World Cup was not just a sporting defeat, but also a symbolic one. It marked the beginning of an era of uncertainty for Brazilian football, a period where, despite the ever-present talent, consistency was missing to turn potential into achievements. From that point on, Brazil began facing a footballing identity crisis, urgently needing to reassess its future and find new ways to regain its lost prestige. But there was hope when a star emerged, a savior for the Brazilian team. His name was Neymar. Since the age of 14, Neymar had been labeled a unique talent, a prodigy destined to shine on the biggest stages of world football. The fact that his generation had not produced other players at the same level only meant that all the pressure fell on him. From a very young age, Neymar carried the burden of enormous expectations, something that few athletes could bear. Even so, reaching the status of one of the best players on the planet and becoming the top scorer for the Brazilian national team, equaling the legendary Pelé with 77 goals according to FIFA, is an achievement that cannot be overlooked. From the 2010s onwards, the Brazilian national team began facing challenges never seen before. Even with Neymar, the team struggled to fully regain its identity. The 7-1 loss to Germany in the 2014 World Cup semifinal on home soil was a devastating blow and marked the start of a new phase of crisis. Early elimination from the 2015 Copa America and other frustrations in international tournaments intensified questions about the management and future of Brazilian football. In recent years, the national team continued to suffer from a lack of cohesion and an over-reliance on Neymar. Even with the emergence of young talents like Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo, the team failed to establish consistent tactical unity. Furthermore, the absence of players developed in domestic clubs and the scarcity of standout coaches revealed structural problems within Brazilian football. The penalty shootout loss to Croatia in the 2022 World Cup quarterfinals was yet another sign that Brazil remains far from regaining its prestige. Off the pitch, the Brazilian Federation faced corruption scandals and chaotic management, further damaging the team's image. Unexpected losses to teams like Morocco and Senegal in friendlies and irregular performances in qualifiers deepened the crisis. Brazil is now struggling to find a new direction and risks failing to qualify for the next World Cup, something unimaginable just a few decades ago. The Jogo Bonito seems increasingly distant, and the team must reinvent itself to recapture the essence that made Brazil the biggest name in football history. Beyond structural problems and the lack of tactical innovation, the globalization of football has also had a profound impact on Brazil. More and more, young players leave the country early in search of opportunities in European academies, where they are shaped by different cultures and playing styles. This fragments the collective identity of the Brazilian national team, as many of these athletes grow up without developing deep ties to the football played in their homeland. Meanwhile, Brazilian clubs have shifted from being breeding grounds for great stars to becoming mere stepping stones, losing the ability to develop talent and build competitive teams that could sustain a strong national team. The distance between players and the domestic scene is also reflected in a lack of connection with the fans. Something that was once fundamental to the mystique of the national team. Icons like Pelé, Romario, and Ronaldo weren't just great players. They were national symbols representing the pride and resilience of a people. However, the current generation seems more concerned with status and individual careers, fueling a perception that there is a lack of commitment and passion when it comes to wearing the yellow jersey. Additionally, Brazil has never managed to develop a consistent tradition of elite coaches, while clubs and national teams around the world embraced modern, tactical innovations. Brazil remained resistant to change, stuck in a style that no longer proves effective in contemporary football. The anticipation of a foreign coach like Carlo Ancelotti was seen as a beacon of hope for bringing this renewal. However, with the Italian coach deciding to stay at Real Madrid, uncertainty once again surrounds the national team. The absence of a leader with a modern vision and the ability to implement new ideas is yet another obstacle for a team desperately seeking to regain its relevance. Frustrations mount as the team stumbles in key matches and competitions, and the internal atmosphere seems to be crumbling. Recent defeats in qualifiers to Uruguay and instability in Copa America campaigns indicate that Brazil is dangerously close to a critical moment. The once majestic team, which inspired both fear and admiration, now struggles to stay relevant amid pressure and criticism. While there are still promising talents like Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo, and occasional flashes of brilliance, the lack of a cohesive structure and a clear philosophy prevents the formation of a consistent team. The over-reliance on Neymar, who for years has borne the weight of expectations alone, is also a reflection of a bigger issue: the inability to create a balanced squad capable of playing as a unit. Today, Brazil faces a dilemma. On one hand, there is a deep nostalgia for its glorious past, which fuels almost unrealistic pressure on the current players. On the other, there is an urgent need for reinvention, both on and off the pitch. Now, all eyes are on a young prodigy, Endrick. Just as Neymar once was, he is seen as the future of Brazilian football. But can he break the cycle of unfulfilled promises, or will he be yet another star that fades before it truly shines? Some are convinced we are witnessing the next phenomenon, while others say he's just another product of the hype. And you can find out more by watching our special video on Endrick right here on the channel. The national team must embrace the changes of modern football, find new leaders, and above all, rediscover the passion that made it a symbol of excellence for decades. If it fails to adapt and evolve, Brazil risks remaining just a shadow of what it once was, a sleeping giant trapped in the glories of the past. Brazil's history shows that the talent and passion for the game have never completely disappeared. Amid the struggles, there is still hope that, with the right changes, the national team can regain its shine and write a new chapter in the history of world football. To achieve this, it will take more than just technical skill. It will require the courage to break old habits, the humility to learn from mistakes, and the unity to rebuild the identity that once made Brazil the greatest footballing nation.